Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started in just about 59 seconds, so stay tuned. Okay, I think everybody's gotten settled, has their coffee, their water, their tea. So I wanted to give you a big warm welcome to our webinar today. My name is Kim Courvoisier. I am the Director of Content and Customer Marketing at Lob. And our webinar topic today is the secret ingredient to lightning fast, predictable direct mail. And you are all in for a huge treat today, as you're going to hear from one of the leading subject matter experts on the planet, Mike Tuffley, our Director of Solutions Engineering. You'll walk away with a deeper understanding of not only the challenges, but the solutions that exist to turbocharge your direct mail programs like never before. At the end, Mike's going to give you a live demo that'll last about 20 minutes so you can see how you can trigger, automate, and send a piece of direct mail in real time. Also, for housekeeping, you can use the Q&A in the chat panel to submit questions, and I'll sprinkle them throughout the presentation so you don't have to wait till the end. And last but not least, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll get an email afterwards with a link. So feel free to just sit back and soak in the recipe for success. Now, in order to get us started, let's take a quick poll. What's the biggest barrier you have to sending lightning fast direct mail? I'm going to pop up our poll, give you all a moment. Is it your complex workflow, that arduous approval process, those U.S. Postal Service slowdowns, or something else that's preventing you from sending lightning fast mail? I love watching the results tick up. Oh, we're neck and neck. All right, let's close this poll down and see what we've got. Okay. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to Mike. Get us started.
Yes, thank you, Kim. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, The Secret Ingredient to Lightning Fast and Predictable Direct Mail. I'm here to show how to combine the personalization and responsiveness customers demand with the high response rates and ROI of direct mail. So this webinar really is geared to all levels of experience and automation. I'll walk you through the main things to modernize in your direct mail campaigns and share actionable tips and tactics to help you use direct mail in some powerful ways. I'll be speaking for about half an hour today, then answering some of the questions you sent us in the lead up to the webinar. And then hopefully we'll have time to answer some new questions as well. And if you have any additional questions about direct mail, how it fits into your omnichannel communication strategy, you can always contact me at mtuffley@lob.com. We've also shared some resources where you can learn more about direct mail, which you can find in the webinar UI. Don't worry if you missed something. This webinar is being recorded and you'll all receive a copy in your email in case there's anything you want to share or review. All right. Before we dive into it, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Lob. So Lob provides a complete direct mail solution so you can send smarter, faster, and more targeted direct mail. We provide APIs and integration for print and mail, address verification, and we're supported by a nationwide printing network and automated workflow to dramatically speed up, simplify, and streamline your direct mail processes. So, what do customers want? Marketers must always be thinking about what a customer needs and expects. Are they looking for a high touch approach or something that's a little bit lower pressure? Do they want deep, long form content? or something that's quick and simple, a way to get basic answers? Do they want 1,000 different options or just the one right option? But I think there's one thing that everyone can agree on is that customers want their time to be valued. A recent Forrester study shows that actually 71% of customers said valuing their time was the most important thing that a company could do. And what it means to value a customer's time might vary a little from industry to industry or customer to customer, but in general, we can all have a pretty good idea of what that concept means. So, what does valuing a customer's time mean? You need to anticipate a customer's needs. You need to optimize all of your assets and workflows to make it as easy as possible for customers to find what they need or get where they want to go. You need to provide a single, consistent voice across channels and be accessible so that customers can get help or share feedback on that channel, whichever one is most convenient for them. You also need to respond quickly and adapt to all of the changing demands so you don't fall behind as those customers' needs change. So that takes customer tracking and analytics. You need customer tracking and analytics so you can anticipate the needs of not only your individual customers, but also the more general customer groups and cohorts. You need to be able to personalize to them all of the content so you can deliver the optimal assets and offers to each individual customer. You need to adapt an omnichannel or at least a multi-channel communication strategy so you can provide a single accessible voice and point of contact. You need to do lots of testing and optimizing to be responsive. And of course, you need modern workflows with automation so you can adapt to changing customer demands and execute quickly. But respecting your customers' time isn't enough to get great results anymore. It's more like the least you can do. And even if you're doing everything right, you can still end up with poor conversion, response rates, and email open rates. A recent campaign monitor study found email click throughs average around 2.6%. Other studies have shown even lower results. Studies of unsubscribe rates usually peg the numbers somewhere around 1 to 3%, which means even if you're getting pretty high click throughs immediately, your email list will get less effective over time. In fact, average Google search ad click through rates are about 3.17%. And there's still growing evidence that a lot of the people clicking would have visited your site anyway. Cart abandonment rates are somewhere between 55 to 84%, depending on the study, but the average rate is around 70%. So companies use direct mail as a way to boost response and ROI. Direct mail has some impressive stats behind it, and it has a base response rate that's roughly 13 times higher than email. It also combines really well with your other channels in an omnichannel strategy, with response rates rising from 6% up to 27% when it's combined with email. But it does have some substantial limitations, at least in kind of the sort of legacy workflows most companies use today, which keep it as a niche tool. It prevents it from becoming a more core channel like email. And there's a lot of uncertainty about whether direct mail can have the speed, predictability, visibility, low, stable cost that companies need to make it a core channel. And that's what this webinar is really about. It's about overcoming the challenges that limit what you could do with direct mail so you can use it as a core part of the way you interact with your customers, leads, and business partners in the same manner as you do your other digital channels. So, some common direct mail problems. Here are a few of the most common problems we've seen companies have with direct mail. It can lack the speed and customization you need to be really quick and responsive to customer needs. There's low visibility, so you can't really gain a lot of insight to what's working and what's not. Cost can also be a problem in a few ways. Most companies, contract with printers, bundlers, a host of other service providers for each batch that they want to send of direct mail, and those costs can change substantially based on the volume, the ink, the paper selection, and several other factors. So it can be really hard to actually budget out and plan for your direct mail strategy as far as spend is concerned. Batch processing itself is also a limit on direct mail. Because in traditional vendor relationships, direct mail becomes a lot more affordable when you're doing it, in a larger volume, like a much bigger run than it is with these small targeted campaigns. But more targeted campaigns are really what drive conversions. So batch pricing has like a major downside. You also have unpredictable delivery windows due to a lot of factors, including, your vendor timelines, fluctuating postal demands, weather, holidays, your own internal workflows, all of those things that stop you from effectively coordinating your direct mail with all of your other channels. A lot of direct mail teams also have limited customer data. So, along with outdated data management processes, which make direct mail campaigns less effective, and it can also introduce a lot of waste, incorrect addresses, return to sender. And finally, even if you make progress solving your other problems, you still have a lack of automation and orchestration. And this prevents you from executing direct mail campaigns with the speed and flexibility with which you can execute all of your digital campaigns. So let's start with one of the most important factors, speed. With your digital channels, your workflow is quick because you're just responsible for the content. When you send an email or you send an SMS, post an ad, whatever that may be, there's a whole digital infrastructure at work behind the scenes that delivers your content to the recipient, and it's already been taken care of. You don't even know what works because you just know it will get your content where it needs to go. All this digital infrastructure doesn't much care what you're sending in most cases. You could send one newsletter out to 1,000 subscribers, or you could customize each and every email, and it works exactly the same. So your entire workflow is just designing your campaign, which is pretty quick, around a week or two. And although it's possible, even to go faster than that, but with legacy direct mail, it often takes like six weeks or more to get that project out the door. And that's not even counting the delivery time that the mail pieces are spending in the USPS mail stream. And there's a few reasons for this. Your direct mail is slow because, well, the biggest problem is that you're responsible for the whole workflow. You've got to address everything that's being printed, addressed, and sent out. You have to negotiate with your printers, your bundlers. You have to acquire your email addresses, check your quality, verify that everything was completed. Unless your company works in printing and logistics, or you have a printer on site, this really doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, imagine if email worked like that. Imagine you had to negotiate with your email service provider all of the rates to produce 10,000 copies of your newsletter, call up your digital logistics company to arrange for your 10,000 copies to be electronically transported to all the various subscribers. It would change really everything how you use email, wouldn't it? You couldn't just send off a message, and even if a regular newsletter would probably take multiple sign-offs and planning meetings each time. Even though the technology itself would still be almost instantaneous, having to handle that infrastructure would still make it incredibly slow and inefficient. And that's really the situation you're in with direct mail today. The main problem isn't the time that it takes to print and send letters or postcards, it's the time that leads up to get to that point. So this is what a legacy direct mail workflow looks like. This is a picture of a typical mail workflow as it were today with your traditional print vendors. There are literally dozens of steps involving the creative consultants, the stakeholder meetings, the printers, the bundlers, all of the address list providers. There's a lot here, and we're not even going through it all. And if you want to learn more about it, you can check out our free ebook, Modernizing the Direct Mail Process. So direct mail isn't slow because you're waiting on the postal service. Direct mail is slow because your workflow is decades out of date and involves a lot of work that can easily be automated to reduce the complexity of this workflow. So what does that workflow look like with LOB? Much simpler. This is a picture of the lob workflow. You send us the mail and we do everything else. We automatically upload it to printers, then they hand it off to the US Postal Service and then send you all of the tracking data along the way. We can get things printed and in the mail within 48 hours. Our system automatically routes direct mail to printers who are nearest to the recipient, and this reduces the delivery time. So now, instead of weeks of bureaucracy, all you have to do is design the direct mail, press send, and this can potentially save weeks of time for each direct mail campaign.
Hey, Mike, it's Kim. I just wanted to chime in for a minute because we had a question sent in. I think it's a great time to ask it. So, like, whoa, full stop. That slide before this, that just made my head hurt. That's a legacy workflow that a lot of people are still trying to do to get their direct mail out the door. But this slide, like, how fast can we get set up and get our first piece of mail sent out? Is what someone's asking. Like, this just blew their mind. They're like, so from that to this, what does that look like?
That's a great question. It really does depend on the complexity of the workflow that we're trying to operationalize, and the solution stack that the customer is utilizing in support of their direct mail initiatives. I would say that most of our enterprise customers, this looks anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Typically it's adopting this new HTML approach to their creative, as opposed to traditionally we've done things with design tools like Adobe Illustrator or something online like Figma, and then mapping that process through to HTML is a pretty straightforward process. Sometimes we've seen customers get up and running in as little as an afternoon, or even as short as a week. But yeah, we oftentimes we would say 4 to 6 weeks on average.
Awesome. That's pretty much a game changer.
Right. Thank you for the question, Kim. Let me advance to the next slide. All right. So let's go to the next problem with direct mail. Really, it's the lack of customization. So, in legacy workflows, there are really two main reasons you can't customize adequately. So one is the way in which your workflow is set up, and the other one is a limitation of the printing services and how they're typically priced. So in legacy workflows, the actual design process often doesn't support customization, or it only supports like minimal customization. For example, you might have your workflow constructed around some paper-based designs where you actually circulate a paper proof. Once that proof is completed, you send out a PDF and your design is essentially frozen. So you might be able to specify the name and address, but that's about it. For transactional direct mail, you might have some kind of legacy billing system where you can only fill in certain fields and then everything else is kept standardized. And if your design process is based around standardized mailings, you probably don't have any mechanisms in place that you could use to track and trigger some of these different customizations. So, fixing your design process alone wouldn't be enough, because you wouldn't have any way to apply those customizations or tell your printer what you want customized. The other problem with customization as it exists today: cost. So printers generally factor the percentage of each letter that is customized into the cost of printing direct mail, and high customization can get really expensive. So even if you gain the capability to apply a lot of customization, you need a very strong case for customization, or it's just not worth the price. And if you don't have a lot of visibility into your process, which we'll get into a moment, you can't really show that increasing customization is worth the cost. So even if you fix your design, you fix your workflow problems, you still might be stuck with a lack of customization because of vendor pricing, and no way of rationalizing it because you have no insight into how those customizations might be performing.
Mike, we've got a quick question from Bruce in the audience, and it really does play into customization, right? Because in order to customize, you have to have a list. That list has to have data about your customers. So Bruce has a question: if the customer doesn't have a prospect database, are you able to supply them with data?
That's a great question. So while we are not a data vendor ourselves, we do partner with several technology partners that operate in that space. So you can provide them with all of your parameters for the audience that you wish to select, and they're able to furnish these lists. Some of them can actually even not only provide you with the data themselves, but also send that directly off to Lob on your behalf.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
All right, direct mail customization. So to make your direct mail as customizable as all of your digital channels, you really need three things. Printer pricing that doesn't depend on customization options, um, or something that's fed by a flexible design process, and something that's upgraded to like a workflow that will actually be able to support that process. So the printing piece isn't a technical issue. It's just a matter of price structure. Lob's print network actually provides flat per piece pricing on all of our printed mail pieces, whether you're using 100% customization or none at all. And because we buy capacity for all of our clients in bulk, prices stay affordable, economies of scale, that problem is easy to solve. So the flexible design workflow. Upgrading your design and workflow is a little bit more involved, but it starts with a flexible design process. In our experience, the best way to make your design process flexible and customizable is to switch over to HTML template-based design. HTML templates are ideal for direct mail design for a number of reasons. They're simple to create, adapt, and reuse. They support virtually unlimited customization with as many merge variables as you wish to include. They don't require the complex pre-processing that PDF files do, and they're also small, which saves a lot of bandwidth. So we can provide HTML direct mail design tools along with an extensive library of templates that integrate with the rest of our direct mail solution. Oftentimes we see our customers leveraging creative that's already being used in support of their other digital channels and just mapping that through to their direct mail to maintain uniformity across the channels. So how do we fix our workflow with Lob? So how you adapt your workflow to unlock the flexibility of HTML templates really depends a lot on your current workflow, all your current tools, and whatever your current appetite for change may be. Building an entirely new workflow internally will be complex and difficult, particularly if you have legacy elements in your IT systems. But Lob simplifies that process in a number of ways. First, we handle the work of production for you, so you only have to fix that workflow up to the design stage. We simplify the data flow in a similar way, giving you a lot of visibility, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. But what usually works best is to integrate HTML direct mail design into the workflow you already have for your emails and your other digital channels. So, Lob works flawlessly out of the box with popular CRMs and marketing automation platforms like Marketo, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Braze, Iterable. I could go on and on. So really hooking your direct mail into your digital workflow as it exists today is a straightforward process, and it can take anywhere from a half-hour call with me and my team up to several weeks or more, depending really on the needs and the decision-making process. So low visibility. Another problem with the traditional mail process. So low visibility is a common problem, right? Actually, it's the most universal of the legacy direct mail workflows in terms of problems, right? You have lack of visibility into the process once you hand everything off to the printers, right? So you can't tell whether a letter has been printed when it's been handed over to USPS. And a lot of companies just don't have any like delivery confirmation, so they can't even tell when a mail piece has been delivered or whether or not it was sent back until you get that postcard back in your PO box as return to sender. And you probably don't have any sort of direct visibility into the customer responses, so you really can't track which customers are converting, what's driving traffic to your website, and there's really no way for you to use that information to then, as a feedback loop, better inform and optimize your direct mail campaigns to be executed more strategically going forward. So how do we fix that? So fixing visibility, fixing the lack of visibility in this process, we use delivery confirmation and error codes because they're pretty simple, and we already provide that data. Lob records everything that happens to a mail piece and then makes that data available to you through our API, our dashboard, and our Webplex. So you can track all of your mail pieces through the print processes. You can see, when they're received by the U.S. Postal Service, when they're delivered, and if any mail pieces do generate an error, you'll see that too. So for customer attribution, the fix is using unique codes to track conversions. Or so if you're sending out, say, like a 20% discount, you can include a unique QR code or some unique HTML code or some promo code that's printed directly on the mail piece. When the customer uses that discount, the unique code will tell the customer who converted, and that conversion was a direct result of that mail piece. You can also use unique toll-free numbers, unique landing pages, basically all of the same use cases that you're using today that you are going to use as a call to action to get a user on the phone or going to a website. All right, so what's next? So we're going to talk. Yes.
Sorry, chiming in again here from the cloud. So I'm curious, just based on like the visibility and those fixes for visibility, one of the questions that came in before the webinar was, well, how do I measure the impact of my direct mail? And like, how do I get that stuff from Lob, or do I?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a number of ways of doing things, and if we were to look at the more traditional processes, performing activities like matchbacks, all of that is possible, and you can export the data directly from the Lob dashboard to help aid in those more archaic methodologies. But I think that the best answer really is, how are you measuring that with your digital channels today, and then really thinking through in terms of measuring the success of your direct mail channel in a very similar way, because you're mapping through a lot of those same processes. So for example, and while I should take a step back, while Lob doesn't have access to any of your marketing automation data, we don't actually do any sort of direct analyses ourselves. What we do is we provide you with the infrastructure, the tooling to be able to do that yourself, again, in the same manner that you would be doing it for your digital channels. So for example, when you send out an email, there's a link there. It may take them to a personalized landing page. It could take them to, it may have UTM parameters, so that when it just provides insight to all of your web analytics, how that site traffic was originated. Think through mapping that process directly through to direct mail in a similar way. So that link that was contained in the email was programmatically generated. It's probably a terribly long link, something that you can't necessarily print on a mail piece and expect a customer to transcribe over to their web browser URL bar. But what you could do in a very similar manner is programmatically condense that link to like a vanity URL, map it through to a QR code, all of those things, so that when a customer gets their camera phone out and clicks on that particular QR code, you're going to be generating traffic to that website, but included in that will be all of the, again, the UTM parameters and everything, so that you can actually do the proper attribution in the same way that you would your other digital channels.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. I think it's just like a complete mindset change, right? Like anything I can do in my email or my digital channels, I can pretty much do it direct mail now. So that's very cool.
Exactly. And we'll, when we get to some of the other options around experimentation, tracking, all of those things that we're doing with our digital channels, I'll be showing you all how to map that over to direct mail. But first, let's talk a little bit more about how cost structure can limit to direct mail and how we can fix that. So we've already talked about how the cost structure of printing can disincentivize customization, but there are even more serious ways that cost limits your direct mail capabilities. So the first is like complex fluctuating cost models that make it really hard to budget your direct mail spend effectively. And second, batch processing really disincentivizes those more targeted and innovative direct mail campaigns, in favor of these like large, planned mail blasts. So let's talk about complexity and instability. In a legacy direct mail workflow, each print job is typically a one-off contract, usually involving multiple vendors. Everything that affects those costs, the choice of paper, ink, color, variability, vendor availability, volume. Um, there's a lot there, and it's very difficult to plan out a program to efficiently utilize that budget, because even small changes in any of those factors can cause substantial changes downstream in cost. So batch processing is one part of this complex costing model, but it really deserves its own section because it poses additional problems on its own. In theory, it's a sound approach. Volume discounts make sense. I mean, if you have a lot of direct mail to send, of course, you're going to want to leverage your demand to get better rates. Um, but the problem is, and it's like with any other channel, targeted campaigns are a lot more effective in direct mail. Um, Using customer history, demographic research, any information that you have, it lets you focus on who your targets are and who are more likely to convert, with all of the content being personalized, designed, and everything to appeal to them specifically. So batch processing really makes it hard to move to this more targeted approach because you're immediately imposing higher per piece pricing on your direct mail, which makes the new approach more difficult to justify, right? So you're immediately sacrificing volume for what might be an unproven tactic with your organization. So how do we solve for this? Um, to solve for this, you really need an intermediary between you and the printing companies, the bundlers, all the other service providers that are currently involved in the direct mail supply chain. That intermediary, basically a direct mail as a service, provider like Lob, can leverage the combined volume of all of its customers to get low per piece costing, which is actually passed on to you as a customer. So whether you're sending a single letter or postcard or a million of them, your price stays consistent. And it works for the print shops because we provide them with a lot of work. They get the aggregate across our entire customer base. And it works for us because then we can save all of our customers money. We get the economies of scale, and still turn a profit. Most importantly, it works for you. You get a much simpler, a much more predictable pricing model that lets you really plan out, the most effective use of your direct mail budget. So another problem is that unpredictable delivery window. So, we've solved a lot of the fundamental problems with direct mail. The lack of speed, the lack of customization, the lack of visibility, all of the fluctuating costs, the batch minimums. But you know, direct mail is starting to look a lot closer to what you'd expect from a core channel, instead of this old clunky niche tool, but we still have this problem of delivery windows, because effective marketing and communication requires very precise timing. If you're going to be sending out some Black Friday postcards, you don't want them to arrive the weekend after Thanksgiving. So, but digital channels really do provide us that opportunity to be very precise with their delivery. They can reach customers in seconds, right? And exactly at the right time. They know even to the time of the day when to optimize for all of that messaging to make sure that they get the highest response rates, right? So really the problem that traditional mail has is fixing the speed problems that allow direct mail to catch up to these other channels. But it still doesn't quite give us the level of accuracy we need. So delivery time can actually vary by a couple of days, depending on seasonal patterns, the distance from where the mail piece originates to its destination, weather, holidays, election years, tax season, all sorts of other factors. So what do we do? And how do we fix this? So that's where we get to take a data-informed approach to executing our direct mail campaigns more strategically. So unfortunately, this still isn't a problem that has like 100% been solved, but we've gotten pretty close, and we'll be getting a lot closer in the near future. So, with Lob, you actually get all of the direct mail delivered to an address on the precise date you want it delivered, with that distribution centered as close around the target in-home date as possible, with some new functionality that we'll be coming out with next year. The way that we do that, it involves a couple of factors. So first off, all of our automation makes delivery quicker and more predictable. So again, because we are routing all of our mail pieces to a printer that's closest to the ultimate destination for the mail piece, we can optimize for those efficiencies. We also have SLAs in place with our printers, so we know exactly when they'll be sending mail. We, the delivery speeds for mail pieces, it can be unpredictable at times. But when the mail piece is being sent from the closest printer to its destination, there's just a lot fewer steps. So it allows us to make that mail delivery speed a little bit more predictable. So we also provide, extensive tracking information for every single mail piece that goes out. As we've talked about, that information really enables you to plan for all of your sending conditions. So you can calculate, when do I need to send all of my requests to Lob to make sure that I can, as close as possible, hit those target in-home dates, to optimize for response, or to be able to posture myself successfully for a particular campaign. And we've also provide for the tracking information, all of the information for those sending conditions, right? So you can take your historical data and use that as a more informed approach. So certain times of the year mail pieces may spend a little bit longer in the mail stream. So let's say you're sending a postcard to Massachusetts in December, exactly what that rush is going to be, because you can filter down to say, show me this time last year, on average, how long did it take for all of my mail to get to Massachusetts? And knowing that, you can actually adjust all of your triggers to compensate for all of that kind of seasonal variation. So you can send direct mail to your printer 5 days before you want it to arrive in May, but maybe in December, you would leave an additional day to compensate for those variations.
So Mike, I think we've got about 20 minutes left, and I really want you to be able to show the folks your demo, and so they can see the lightning fast process in action. So why don't we flick over to the demo, and then obviously everyone will get a copy of the slides so they can kind of flick through these last few on their own at their leisure afterwards. But let's like jam onto our demo and see what we've got. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect. Thank you, Kim.
You got it.
Let me go ahead and share out my screen. All right. Kim, can you see my screen okay?
We definitely can. Take us away.
Excellent. So what we're looking at here is actually the Lob dashboard. So when you log in for the very first time, you can see exactly how much you've spent for the month, how many requests you've made to create various mail pieces. The best way to think about how you're going to be working with Lob is honestly those parallels that we discussed earlier about how we're sending email today. You know, when we open up one of our HTML templates, we can see here that, you know, this looks like an HTML, it just looks like a web page. In fact, that's really all this is. This is just an 8.5 by 11-inch web page. In fact, we can see exactly what that looks like rendered in my browser here. So what Lob does to unlock the, you know, all of the same flexibility and dynamic capabilities that email has is through a very similar mechanism. These merge variables, which effectively serve as placeholders for all of that custom content that you'll be mapping in to personalize each of your mail pieces. So for example, here we have these CTAs across the top. So I want my toll-free number, my custom landing page, all of that's going to be varied by my campaign or the audience. I'm going to have varying offers that may be printed based on whoever the intended recipient is eligible for. I'm going to personalize it with their name. I'm also going to include a personal promotion code and even a QR code here that's generated using client-side JavaScript, so that, you know, I could send 1 million of these letters off, no two of which are going to be the same. So if I actually go back to our dashboard, the way that it works is we will take all of those merge variables. So you can see here that we have a key and that maps to that particular customized merge variable in the HTML, and then the value that we want to populate in. So this is all the data that's coming from your systems. And then when I click preview, all we're doing is mapping those values in. We render it just like a web browser would, and then we take this PDF snapshot. And this PDF is actually what gets sent down to the printer for manufacturing and mailing. So you can see here that's been personalized with my name. Here are some personal offers. You can even see the promotional code, QR code, and the CTAs. This type of proof is available every time that you create a digital record with Lob. So what I'm going to do now is actually walk you through what a particular use case might look like. So this is just a retail banking demonstration where I'm going to be demonstrating one of the 3 common models that we see folks employing when they're sending mail with Lob. The first, which this will actually illustrate, is going to be like a trigger-based use case. So for example, some sort of real-time user action actually instantiates a request to Lob, and we create a mail piece based on whatever, you know, criteria that particular campaign dictated. Then we also have, you know, something like more akin to regular recurring smaller micro batches, if you will. So something like I want to be able to send all of my customers a happy birthday postcard. So a job runs every single day. All it says is show me the folks that have birthdays in 2 weeks, and then it goes down the list and sends all of those records off to Lob, and we send them out a happy birthday postcard. And then the last would have been something more akin to those large standard planned campaigns that we had alluded to earlier in the presentation, where you select a large audience and then you send that off to Lob for a particular campaign, and all of the data elements within that record may map to some of the personalization. But for today's demo, I'm just going to walk you through this particular use case where I'm at a website. I'm just going through an enrollment process. I'm going to enter my first name and my last name and my social security number, my driver's license. And as I navigate through this form, you can see here we also have our address verification product running in the background. So you can see that autocomplete is actually going to populate with our corporate address. And when I go ahead and click next, it's actually going to standardize all of that. But let's say from your perspective, you want to create a campaign that accounts for someone not completing an application. Or maybe you're an e-commerce company and you want to be able to create a campaign for someone who maybe abandons a cart. So if I leave this web page and this job runs maybe once a week, it says, hey, show me all the people who left applications unfinished. It ran in the background. You can see here, here's that letter that we just created. So not only do I show a digital proof that was created in real time, I can open it up. You can see here exactly what that mail piece is going to look like. It's got my address. We've already validated it for deliverability. We've mapped in all of that custom content. One example here might be, you can see that's generated a custom QR code. So if I actually pull up my QR code reader on my phone, I'm gonna take a picture of that. And what it's done is it copied through a web page that I can now go back to, and it's going to take me right back to the form that I had already started completing. And you see here that's already populated my information. And it just, in terms of how do we, make that drive better conversion through more convenience. This is all of these marketing options that you have available today with your digital channels. And what I've demonstrated is now you can map them directly over to your digital channels. In fact, if we go back to the LOB dashboard, I can go to our postcard section. You can see that by completing that application, it also kicked off another campaign. So here's the postcard that it created. And again, it's standardized all my address, validated it. We've captured through metadata the campaign that this particular mail piece was associated with. So we have a lot of flexibility in terms of, again, that tracking information, being able to tag all of our mail pieces with these key value pairs, up to 20 of them. This allows us to search and filter in the platform better, be able to find all of the mail pieces. It helps us actually drive down, in the mail analytics so that we can get down to a more granular analysis of mail speed and where our mail pieces are at any given time. In fact,
Okay,
I'm going
I have to chime in, Mike. Someone typed in, they said, whoa, 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 this is so rad. Not your mama's direct mail. So keep showing us the goodies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll actually toggle over to our live environment real quick and just give you an example of what it looks like to actually track a mail piece once it's in the mail stream. So I'll pull up our classic demo letter here. You can see when you're doing all of your development and all of your testing, it's all done in our test environment. Then when you're ready to go live, all you do is switch over to your live API keys and you're ready to go. And as soon as you start sending requests using your live API keys, it'll get sent to the live environment. And you'll notice now that there's the most immediate noticeable difference is that we have this extended timeline here across the top, which has with it associated all of the events in the life cycle of any mail piece traveling through USPS mail stream. So not only can I see exactly what my record's going to look like in real time, but I can also track it as it's being manufactured at the print site, as it's handed off to USPS. Every time that unique barcode gets scanned at every USPS facility, USPS will then surface those tracking events back to us and we can furnish them to you here. So you'll have a location and a timestamp associated with every single event, as it transpires in near real time.
And
so,
Mike, on that note, sorry to interrupt, but we have a question from the audience. Does the address run through NCOA as well as CAS?
Yes, in fact, we have NCOA functionality that's baked into the platform that will, in the response, when you send the request to create a mail piece, in our response, we actually have a parameter called recipient moved. And if that value is true, we'll actually provide you with a redacted forwarding address for the address that it will ultimately be forwarded onto. Good question.
Sweet, thanks.
All right, and then what does it look like to actually track its scale? So we have built-in, mail analytics. So if I pull up, go back to August, you can see here that we can actually see what the average mail speed is for any given period of time. I could also reduce the scope to specific products to see how those can impact the mail speed. I can even apply something like metadata where let's say I'm sending a select market campaign to San Francisco, and I want to know when should I send those requests to Lob to make sure that I hit the appropriate in-home date. I can apply that sort of metadata filter, because all of my mail that's been tagged with city equals San Francisco, I'll be able to get all of that granularity of data. In fact, even if you weren't using metadata tags, our mail distribution dashboard also has that information at the state level. But again, it just lets us know, based on what we anticipate the mail delivery speed to be for any given destination at any given time, we can execute all of our campaign sends to Lob, just more strategically in a data-informed manner. So, if mail sent to California on average takes 4 business days, but maybe only 3 business days for New York, I might consider sending all of the mail to that destination out a day earlier so that it arrives at the same time. And we do see, these types of data-led strategic executions where it might be staggered by day to make sure that everything's hitting a single target and home date. And in fact, you can see here with our tracking events, I can also see where those aggregates of mail, what buckets do they roll up into. So for the month of August, or we could see this by day or by week if we actually get more granular with the time frame. But I can see, of all of the mail that I've sent, where is it at in the mail stream? How much of it has been mailed, and how much of it has been in transit versus has already been processed for delivery? What percentage was returned to sender? Which percentage was forwarded on? Like, as you mentioned, is our data NCOA'd? And one of the nice things is, if you have NCOA functionality enabled, you can actually export all of those forwarding addresses from the platform manually. Or let's say you wanted to, as a follow-up, identify those that were returned to sender. I could go into a particular batch. I could export that data from my system. Or, if you have everything set up automatically with, through our API or webhooks, this could be done. This would be fully automated. Otherwise, you could just say, hey, I just want to see all of the mail that was returned, and it would export that as, a spreadsheet that I could go back and update my records. Some of the other things that we see people using webhooks for would be your other marketing automation channels. So, for example, I have a webhook catch that when a letter is processed for delivery, it sends a webhook off to my marketing automation system. My marketing automation system then identifies, oh, this letter was delivered. Let's move to the next sequence in the marketing automation workflow. So we'll send, Mike a text message. So using my Twilio account, it's going to send me a text message. It says, hey, Mike, check your mailbox for this exciting new offer, because it knows that it was a process for delivery event. And I can even, because we contain all of the webhook data contains everything about your mail piece, we could even pick off, an image of what that mail piece that is what it looks like when it arrives in their mailbox. So from a marketing automation workflow, you no longer have to set that static, 14 or 21 day window. In real time when a letter's been delivered. The other thing is capturing all of that data back for your external reporting. Going back to the question earlier about how do we measure all of this? Well, you have all of the delivery data, because we can export that out of the Lob system, in an automated or manual way. We can take that and we can measure it against, using our QR code technology to, say, track through UTM parameters, all of those different, you know, which creatives were the most successful. So I know this was the campaign that we sent out when it arrived. I could do all of that analysis. Where did it actually go? And then what was the subsequent web traffic that it drove? So this is just a sample report that I created in the Google Data Studio BI tool, using some QR response data that we got from Google Web Analytics. But I knew exactly based on these UTM parameters that I appended to the QR code exactly which creatives drove the highest response rate. How do I continually optimize, from a creative perspective, which form factor is letters better than postcards, or which size postcard works the best versus which format of self mailer. All of those things that you can think about when you want to experiment, do A/B testing. All of those things that you're doing with email today, there's some way of mapping that over to the direct mail process.
So Mike, you're like
Yes.
blowing our minds, and the QA is lighting up right now with great questions. So I think there's an assumption, right? Like there's so many great bells and whistles and tons of functionality here. So the natural question from the audience is, how much more expensive is it to use Lob with all these premium features versus a direct mail house?
How much more expensive?
There's an assumption there in that question that it is more expensive. So let's unpack that for just a minute.
That is a great question. As a technical resource, I make it my mission to not be a part of any of the pricing conversations. And I apologize. I'm not trying to be disingenuous, but I support all of our customers in the pre-sales and post-sales purely from a functional standpoint, like all the technology. So I honestly don't have any insight into what that would look like.
Well, we can definitely get back to you, Kara, with some pricing and some things to address that question. And then just a couple others, since we're winding down here. How many print and mail plants do you engage, and do you process international mail?
We have I believe the last count was somewhere around 20 print shops, both domestic and international. And yes, we do have some international. I don't believe that it's currently originating internationally, but we can send domestically originated mail internationally.
And then last but not least, does Lob leverage informed delivery?
That is part of the technology, by which we're providing all of this tracking information for those scan events.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you for answering all of that. That was really awesome. I love seeing how streamlined and efficient the workflow is. All of the, ability to measure and do things in real time. As someone who spent over a decade in email marketing, it's like amazing to see direct mail has come so far and is doing all of these things that you can do with all the other channels. So as a marketer, that makes me super excited. I would like to do one last poll before we close out. So I'm going to start the poll now. And this is just to ask if you'd like to chat with one of our direct mail pros. So I'll give everyone a second there. And then while you're filling that out, I would also, the weather's turning in most parts of the country. It's turning a little cooler out. So we have this awesome hot sauce and success event that's coming up. And if you register, and when you register, we will send you an assortment of hot sauces. And then you can join this event and do a vertical tasting of hot sauces while you listen to our direct mail pros dish some secrets about direct mail and how to really heat up your direct mail results. So that's happening on December 9th. You'll be joining me, your host, watching me sweat it out as I taste these hot sauces. And so I would love to see you there. There'll be an invite in the email you get after this event. And it's also here if you want to copy it over and register. But we really appreciate you joining us today and asking all those great questions. And we look forward to connecting with you again in the future for all your direct mail needs. Thanks for joining us today.